We're here with Mike McLoughlin, the BC Conservative candidate for the Kelowna-Mission riding, and we're here to ask him our candidate questions that we've been sending out to all the different candidates in this BC election. So Mike, thank you for coming today.
You're welcome.
We're going to start off with some questions about the switch from the HST to the PST/GST. Obviously this was a big issue. What are your thoughts on the move back from HST to a modified version to the prior PST/GST?
Well, I know that it's difficult for the business community, and the concept of having one sales tax, in terms of how businesses handle it, it is more efficient to have one sales tax. But it was the implementation of the HST. So Premier Campbell made the comment that he wasn't going to do anything with HST before the election in 2009. And then right after the election in 2009, they announced that they were going to go to an HST. And that caused a lot of anger in the voters because they felt that they weren't fairly consulted concerning the HST. And that backlash turned into a petition and then a referendum, and eventually we're back with the PST. Yeah. So it's a problem, and I think the whole issue is regarding fair taxation. You know, with the way in which we tax people is we need to do it in a way that is progressive. So people that have more income, they pay more tax, and that just makes sense. And the problem with the sales tax is that it does affect people that are lower income and are fixed incomes, and that kind of taxation is more regressive. So that's some of the challenges with regards to sales taxes, and in particular a GST, PST type arrangement.
And one of those frustrations that people have had is how the PST has been added to used car sales.
That's right. Yeah.
We have saying here that prior to the implementation of the HST, there was only 7% PST on the used cars.
That's right.
And we went back, and now it's applied to private used cars as an exception. So now that we're back to the GST/PST, the PST has been raised to 12% on used cars.
It has, and this is a promise that the Liberals broke, because when they said that they would go back to the PST, that they would respect the will of the people who voted to return to the GST/PST system, that they would just take things back to the way they were. And this is an example of breaking that promise, because obviously 12% is 5% higher than 7%, right? So we are, and I understand that there was some lobbying that was done by the car industry to provide to have it at 12%. And I understand too that some of those industry people are also big supporters of the BC Liberals. So I think that it was an inside job, and I think that there was that it just was breaking a promise. So again, it's not fair taxation. It's not fair to the people who voted for us to go back to the old system.
Okay, thank you. So regarding health care, it's another major issue that BC people are worried about right now. Overcrowding is a problem in the hospitals, and some patients are spending days in the hallway due to a shortage of beds. Yes. What would you do or propose to alleviate this?
Okay, so there's a number of different issues that create this hallway medicine that is happening in our system, and it really has to do a lot with capacity. We don't have the capacity in our system, and in one of the particular areas is through the supply of family doctors. So family doctors are the people that start the whole process. They're the ones that people see, and they need to have a specialist look at their patients. They need to have a referral to the specialist. And what happens is, because our system is there's so little capacity in our system, it takes such a long time to see the specialist that often the family doctors resort to checking them in to emergency so that they can get seen by the specialist a lot faster than if they had been having to make an appointment. So that is it's a systematic issue, and physicians, family doctors need access to specialist referrals without having to check their patients into the hospital, and that would alleviate some of the overcrowding. Another thing with regards to the overcrowding is that there aren't enough family doctors in the system. So what happens is someone goes into the hospital and then they are treated by emergency room physicians, and then they're checked out of the hospital. But when they're checked out, they don't have a family doctor to go back to see. And when that happens, they often find themselves back in the hospital because they don't have anyone who's managing their medications, making sure that they're on the appropriate system and that they're getting good follow-up. And that's because there are not enough family doctors in our system. Last year in Kelowna, over 20 family physicians left practice or moved out of the province due to a better offer. Alberta and Saskatchewan pay their family doctors more. And because we lost 20 family physicians here in Kelowna, it's putting pressure on all the other family physicians. It makes it difficult for them to manage their caseloads, and it makes it difficult for the patients that end up back on the street after being in the hospital. We have 7,500 patients at our Medi-Cal clinics. My wife's a family doctor and we own the Medi-Cal clinics. We have 7,500 patients on our patient roster who are there strictly on a walk-in basis. They do not have a family doctor, and there's a physician shortage, and it's a crisis, and the government is not dealing with it appropriately. We do have a medical school in town, and that's a good thing, and so we are going to be training more doctors, but only 20%, so 6 out of 32 students in the first go-around with this medical school have chosen family medicine as their priority for them to become family doctors. All the rest are going to be specialist doctors. And without the family doctor supply, we're not going to be able to manage our elderly population who have a lot of complex care that needs to be done, chronic disease management. So we are in a challenging situation. So the BC Conservatives support healthcare. They support the training of more family physicians. We would like to see resources provided so that each family physician has more capacity to care for their patients. So they have a nurse practitioner, they have a nutritionist, they have a social worker that works alongside of them and takes some of that load in terms of managing a patient's care. And if we had those kind of resources in each of the various different clinics in town, it would be easier to be a family doctor. They wouldn't suffer from the burnout. I know my wife suffers from burnout because of the pressures that she has as a family physician. So there's a lot that we need to deal with regards to the healthcare system, and in particular, we need more family doctors. We need more family doctors here in Kelowna. We need them in the entire interior and north of the province.
Great. Thank you. So in regards to communication, in the last civic election, a lot of candidates used social media to communicate with the people as they campaigned, but then they turned it off once they were elected. Would you propose to keep the channel open? Why or why not?
Well, I've been told the best internet presence of all of the candidates, and so if you Google my name, Mike McLoughlin, you'll see that I have pages and pages of online access. So you can access me through Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, through the blogs, and through my website, YouTube. I've got YouTube videos. And when someone connects with me on all of these different services, I get a thing on my BlackBerry. And so I can actually get right back to them and either send them a phone number, text me, or call me, or we have a little discussion on the Twitter, so back and forth on the Twitter. So and I am going to continue that after the campaign as your next MLA for Kelowna-Mission. You will be able to reach me, and it will be at any time when you have a question or a concern, or you're having a frustrating situation develop with government and government services. That's the time, right then and there, to get on your cell phone, your smartphone, and send me a message, email me, or just send me a Twitter. MikeForMLA.com is my website, and my Twitter handle is MikeForMLA. And you can actually get a hold of me right then and there. And even as you're standing at the counter, and say, "Hey, what's up? We're having this problem here. Can you help us?" And I could maybe even direct you to a resource or a person that you could talk to that would help with that. In fact, I've already had one person who contacted me on the email because all of the Fortis rates are going up. I don't know if you've noticed that, 30% increase over the last 3 or 4 months on your Fortis electricity rates. So I had someone who contacted me who's one of my future constituents, and they had a concern about Fortis, and I put them in touch with a person I know at Fortis who can answer their questions. And that person was able to apply a farm rate to their electrical situation because they had a rural property. And that actually solved their problem with the rate increases. And so because they were able to get a hold of me, and because of the timeliness of me being able to get back to them, they were able to address this in a timely fashion, and that's going to save them money. And that's exactly what your MLA ought to be able to do. Is, it's beyond now going and making an appointment or following up with a phone call. You need to be able to get a hold of your MLA exactly when you need them, and that's what I commit to.
Okay, so regarding ICBC, the question is, does ICBC deserve to have a monopoly in auto insurance in BC? Other provinces, like Alberta, have made it more competitive.
It has, right. So we're BC Conservatives, and we're for free enterprise, and we don't like monopolies. Currently, we do not have a plan to address the ICBC question. What we are going to do, though, is we're going to put our MLAs to work in the fall. We're going to have them there from September to October, and they are going to be working on a Spending Smarter plan. And part of that Spending Smarter plan is to bring in the CEOs of all of the Crown corporations, including ICBC, and they've got to justify themselves. They've got to justify these large expenditures. One of the challenges we have is with ICBC is that whenever they have a surplus, it just goes into general revenues, and it's another form of taxation. We as the BC Conservatives, we would like to see and find efficiencies in the system, and they shouldn't be operating on a surplus. They should be putting that money back into lowering your ICBC rates, if that's what's happening. So we want to examine all of the accounts, in particular the Crown corporations, and we will put our MLAs to work. And they're going to work a lot harder than like 19 days. I think the MLAs sat in the legislature this year, and last year was around 40 days that they sat in the legislature. So we're going to double that, and we're going to put them to work to find those savings and to make things more efficient, and to lower the fees and the rates and the taxes for the BC taxpayer.
Great. Thank you. So regarding industry, mining, forestry, oil and gas are what some call dirtier, higher risk industries. Many of the jobs in this area are also higher paying and built this province.
Exactly.
It's one thing to say we only want green jobs, but we live in one of the most resource-rich areas in the world.
Yeah.
How do we find harmony with these industries that we need to build our homes, fuel our needs, and provide the materials we need to survive?
That's a great question, and one of the reasons it is because I am standing on the shoulders of some great leaders that have come from Kelowna, in particular Kelowna-Mission. W.A.C. Bennett had a vision for this province, which included the development of its natural resources, and he knew that we needed transport. So that's why he got the road system created, and that's why he had BC Rail. And these transport networks were what we're going to get the people and the equipment to those places where we could get the resources, and then get the resources from those places and ship them out to markets. So he had a vision for this province that included the development of the interior and north of British Columbia, and that area has been seriously neglected by the BC Liberals and by the NDP, because their support is primarily concentrated in the Lower Mainland. So the BC Conservatives, as a part of their platform, have committed $200 million to infrastructure, to creating better roads in the north of the province. And they want to provide for the northern and rural communities. The population of British Columbia is stagnant. It's not growing like it used to be. In fact, when new immigrants come to BC, they end up going to the Lower Mainland, and they aren't being encouraged to go to the north or to the interior, where there are potential, lots of opportunity. So we need to develop our resources. We need to manage them in an environmentally sensitive and friendly way. So I think one of the challenges we have is that we need to educate British Columbians about managing the tension between development of our resources and protecting our environment. And it's possible to do both. It's possible to minimize the risk. We have the technologies, we have the engineering that we can do it in a way that is safe. Like, for example, with the Kinder Morgan pipeline, That pipeline has been in existence for 60 years, and they've never experienced a spill. There was an incident with a backhoe operator, but that was caused by that backhoe operator, but not by how the pipeline was designed. It is, we can manage our natural resources here and extract them from the ground and do it in a way that is environmentally sensitive, and then restore those areas so that, it's friendly to the environment again. So we need to have both a resource development as well as managing our environment. And unless we do that, we won't have the resources for education and healthcare, two of the areas that desperately need to have those resources if they're going to provide for our students and for our children, and provide for our elderly who are, there's more and more of them, coming to British Columbia, and who are growing older here, and we owe it to them to provide them the kind of future that we want to have. So unless we manage our resources and our properly and develop them properly, we won't be able to do that.
Great. Thank you. So regarding funding, some countries have made large funding investments with great success. What projects would you lobby to improve Kelowna? We have a few here listed, and we'd like to hear what you think about them and what kind of priority you'd put to them.
Sure.
So one, we have Kelowna's integrated water supply plan.
Yeah.
Do you support this?
I do. I'm a resident of East Kelowna. We have well water, and I was part of the process last September, October that rejected a proposal by the Southeast Kelowna Irrigation District to actually borrow $15 million to upgrade their water system. And actually their water system has already had an upgrade. 10 years ago we had an upgrade. But because of the change in the drinking water standards as a result of the Walkerton crisis, Health Canada has changed the standards, and so they don't meet those standards anymore. And the Interior Health has come along and said to Southeast Kelowna, you need to upgrade your infrastructure. The problem with that is that we only have 2,200 ratepayers in Southeast Kelowna. They cannot bear the responsibility of having to pay actually a cost of $22 million, which is what it would the total cost for that upgrade is. And the problem is that the province, through the Interior Health, has moved the goalposts, but they haven't provided the resources for Southeast Kelowna to actually start, to make those upgrades. The upgrades are needed, but it cannot be on the backs of 2,200 ratepayers. So we need to bring all the 5 irrigation districts together and have an integrated water plan, and I support the province working with all the 5 irrigation districts so that there is funding available to them, and that those and that if there is a necessary rate increase, it's shared by all of the 5 districts together as opposed to just a small set of ratepayers.
So another question is about free public Wi-Fi in downtown Kelowna.
I think that's a great idea. So I'm all for it, free public Wi-Fi. I think that that it's probably something that can be done with a little investment. It's probably not going to be that expensive, and certainly it would make it so that we can enjoy the outdoors. At the same time, we have access to our through our smartphones, we'll have access to the internet, and I think that it would make it more of an attractive place for us to come and share and sit out on the grass and have fun together in terms of social media and the use of our computers and access to the internet. So I think it's a great idea, and I support it fully.
High-speed bullet train to Vancouver and Calgary. Would you support that?
Well, I think it would be a great thing. I think I'm not sure about where the technology is. I don't think we have a high-speed train here in Canada yet. I know that probably the first place you would probably see it would be kind of the Montreal-Toronto type corridor, and then probably there would be other areas that would, larger urban areas that you would want to connect with a high-speed train. I mean, I'd love to be able to get on a train and get off in an hour's time in Vancouver, and that would beat having to get on the plane and check your bags and do all of that sort of thing. I'm not sure if it's realistic to have it in the near term.
And internet voting on elections and referendums, instead of having to go and do the infrastructure of
Yeah. Well, I think one of the great advantages of our democracy is the distributed way in which voting occurs. So, so it wouldn't be an either-or thing. We would continue to have voting places and continue to use mail-in ballots and advanced polls and all of that sort of thing. But what we would do is you would add an entire new dynamic to the whole voting process by having internet polling, and I think it is possible to do it. I know that there's a lot of security that has to go along with it, because we don't want people voting more than once, and we want to be able to control how they vote. The thing about having a paper ballot is you have the evidence that the person has actually voted, right? It's right there, and it's numbered, and you can go through it, and you can count them physically. There's a physical piece of paper. So so we're going to have to work out some of those kind of issues, but obviously it's a digital age, and we should be prepared to provide that as an option for people to vote.
The last area about funding we have is policing and closed caption television cameras in public areas.
Okay, so policing and closed caption cameras in public areas. I think that the challenge we have there obviously are privacy concerns, because who likes to be filmed? I mean, I think we're probably used to it now, that wherever we go, we're probably on some camera somewhere. But I think that having a camera, if we have a camera, that we need to obviously have signs saying that there are cameras in the area, so that people have a choice. If they don't want to go there, they have a choice as to whether or not they're going to get videotaped. And I think that is important, is that people need to, we need to respect people's privacy and the capturing of their faces. And so we need to notify people if we're going to be doing it. It does have a deterring effect on crime, to be able to have access to video footage. Boston Marathon is a good example of that, where they had access to that video footage, and they were able to capture those images and get to those guys before they did any more harm. So there's certainly a tremendous opportunity to have that kind of technology in place. But I think people need the choice, so that you need to give them notices and tell them that is what is in effect in that area.
So are there any other like funding for Kelowna specifically, improvements that you would suggest or that you're campaigning on?
I tell you what, let's hold on that for a moment, and if one comes to mind, I will definitely we'll redo that one.
So in regards to education, what improvements or changes would you like to see made in the education system?
Well, I think that I know in Kelowna-Mission they need a new middle school. Chute Lake Elementary is as soon as they opened that school, it was oversubscribed. So we need a new middle school in Kelowna-Mission. We're a growing part of this community. Right now we have a stopgap solution where they've added another grade, grade 7. They've moved it to OKM, and that is a challenge in having grade 7s in with grade 12s, and I'm not sure that's a wise situation for them. So we need a new middle school, and they have it as a part of a capital plan. They have a 10-year capital plan. The problem is they never know from year to year what's going to get funded in the capital plan, and that creates a lot of uncertainty, which means that parents don't know what's going to happen to their kids. Are they going to be at a new middle school? Are they going to be at OKM? Or how is that going to work? So, and we need to have stable funding in a long-term capital plan. Just like with the hospitals. I mean, you can't build a hospital without having a long-term capital plan. So the school system here, School District 23, they need a long-term capital plan, and the government needs to commit to those priorities, and they need to stick with those commitments and not backtrack on them every year. That is not how you're going to manage the educational system. So that's one change I would very much advocate for, because as a BC Conservative, we have a part of our Constitution that says that the BC Conservatives vote the will of their constituents first before any party platform. So that's my job, is to represent Kelowna and Victoria. Too often it's Victoria coming to Kelowna and saying, this is the way it is, we can't be any other way, these are the priorities, we can't help, we can't do it. And we need to take Kelowna to Victoria and not take no for an answer.
So a follow-up question about education. How would you propose to make post-secondary education more accessible?
So One of the challenges we have with post-secondary education is that we have a supply system. So basically, the technical colleges, the training schools, the universities, they have a program. They recruit students to the program. The students then take it and graduate. And so the post-secondary education supplies to the marketplace a whole set of people. And the problem is that at times the marketplace can absorb those people, but there are other times, like for example, here in Kelowna, they've just canceled the Bachelor of Arts for Social Work, right? And they just finished that program, so they're just going to have graduate programs for social work here. And that was because they were graduating too many social work students here in Kelowna. They weren't able to get jobs, and that's a problem with our system. So the way I would say is that we need to also have a demand part of our system, which is that industry, in particular companies, they have need for employees with certain skill sets. And they can provide the training for those skills, they can provide the apprenticeships for those skills, and they can fund those positions. And so what we need to have a demand approach to education as well as a supply approach, so that the industry says, hey, we need all of these skills for all of these new positions that we want to create, and we do it by inviting people into these different programs, and you get a broad base start to your education, and then you can choose to go work in a company and get apprenticed and get the skills that the company is able to provide you, and that will lower your pressure for tuition costs, because hey, you know, it's student loans are a real problem out there right now, and students, you know, they graduate and they have this huge debt, and they're desperate to get a job, and they can't find the jobs, and so the system just is not working very well right now. But if we could partner with industry and with companies to provide apprenticeship programs in which students would, you know, the company would pay for it basically, and the students would actually earn money as they're learning their skills. That would alleviate our problem with student debt, and it would provide industry with the skilled workers that they need.
Canada is fostering a new underclass.
Yeah.
We have young adults that are highly educated and overqualified, working low-paying jobs in retail and the service industry.
Right, right.
How would you suggest to solve this problem?
So, one of the things we have in British Columbia is we have a thriving small business and entrepreneurial class, and over 46% of new jobs are created by small business. And that's particularly the case here in Kelowna and Kelowna-Mission, is that there's a lot of opportunity here to start small businesses. I know that my daughter has just actually started a small business. And so what we need to do is we need to encourage young people to create their own jobs by encouraging them in terms of their small businesses. There's lots of new technologies that are available on the web. Like for example, I can give you an example. Street Text is a small business that was created by some local young entrepreneurs, and they have done very well. It's taken right across Canada. It's basically a service for real estate professionals, so that you can get information about a house by just texting a particular number. So that's a creative technology that you know, two young people who probably were working in started out working in retail, but decided that they were gonna invent something, and that's what we need to do, is we need to encourage them. One of the challenges that they have, though, is that they have difficulty hiring local software developers, because the price of them is higher than they would pay if they hired software developers from overseas. And so the provincial government needs to come alongside new businesses, and especially in the technology area, and provide them the tax credits that will help them to hire local people to do their development, as opposed to using cheap labor from overseas. And if they could provide those tax credits, there would just be the difference between what it costs a local person versus what it costs someone from overseas. That tax credit would go a long way for local entrepreneurs to be able to hire the highly educated people and young people in retail to actually work in the areas where they are educated, and to provide those new innovative ideas, new innovative businesses that small business can provide. So I think those are some ideas as to how we can encourage small business and solve that problem of young people not using their education and their skills to the fullest capacity.
So what do you think is an appropriate minimum wage given the cost of living throughout the province and the financial considerations of small business?
Well, being a small business owner, we pay more than the minimum wage at our medical clinics, and I have a little bit of reluctance with regards to minimum wage. I know we need a minimum wage. I know that you need to give people a fair wage, a living wage. They need to be able to pay their rent and buy groceries, and they need all of those sort of things. But the problem with small business is that they have limited resources as well. So the higher the minimum wage, the less small business are going to hire people. There's going to be less people employed, and that's a problem. So how do you manage that tension? You need a minimum wage. Right now it's $10 an hour. It used to be, I think, $8.50, and then you raise it to $10. I think that was a good thing because it helped a lot of the restaurant, larger restaurant chains that could get away with paying somebody $8.50 an hour. Now they have to pay them $10 an hour, and those larger restaurant chains could probably afford to do that. But with small businesses, it's very hard to manage their payroll if there's a high minimum wage. And so what I would like to see is that people have a minimum wage that's fair and reasonable, but not so high that it limits businesses from hiring people.
Thanks, Mike, for coming in today.
Sure.
You can find this interview on Mike's profile on KelownaVotes.com, and you can find all of our candidate question and answers on Kelowna Votes, which is presented by WelcomeToKelowna.com.